Nukes inbound. What do you do? Welcome to Two Doctors Homestead. My name's Daniel, and this is the How to Survive the End of the World Welcome to Prepping video. I've been wanting to make this for a little while and just kind of working through it in my head. But what do you do, right? You get that emergency broadcast alert on your phone that nukes are inbound in your area. Take cover. And what do you do, right? First thing you're going to do, if you think you have time, if you think you have 10 minutes, if you think you have 5 minutes, move fast. Right, get to shelter. That's number one for nukes inbound is shelter. You're going to need protection from radiation, right? You need deep shelter. 55% of the total radiation that comes out of a nuclear explosion is going to happen in the first hour. By the end of the first day, the active radiation is reduced by as much as 80%. So any shelter you can get is better than no shelter, but think deep, dark place, as deep and dark as you can get. Just get away from windows, get away from the surface, right? That's the first thing you've got to do. Let's say you don't get the alert. Right, there's an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. There's EMP weapons out there. It's possible a nuclear attack could start with an EMP, which means you didn't get the alert because all of electronic devices are disabled before any of the nukes go off. Could happen. We don't know. You might just get an EMP. We're going to talk about some different scenarios on what to do, but let's assume you don't get the alert on your phone and a nuclear bomb goes off, right? Survivability starts at about 2 miles from the blast, depending on your shelter. But in the first minute, the first second, duck and cover. Remember those drills from high school, duck and cover your eyes. There will be a bright flash. The bright flash can cover for 13 miles during the daylight, 53 miles at night, and it could temporarily blind you. And you're going to need your eyesight for the minutes and hours to come. So first thing you do, you think a nuke's going off, you'll probably know if a nuke's going off is cover your eyes, right? Turn away from the flash, duck, cover, hide your eyes, right? There's about to be a big flash of light coming in. Once again, survivability starts 2 to 7 miles. So even if you're 2 miles away, the flash can go 13 miles. So hide, cover your eyes, right? That's the first minute, first boom, right? In the first 3 minutes after a disaster, what do you need? Do you have a gas mask? And now this goes beyond just nukes, but even in a nuke, you might have a gas mask. This doesn't have the canister attached. Pro tip, once the canister is attached, it's only good for about 8 hours, which means if you're in a situation where first 3 minutes of any disaster, if you can't breathe anymore, gas mask, certainly scuba gear would be great. Think about a gas mask. This is about $50 on Amazon. Maybe not as good as the $300 ones, but certainly better than nothing. Once again, the canister is only good for 8 hours anyway, so first 3 minutes in is can you breathe, right? You've covered your eyes. It's a nuke. Maybe it's not a nuke. Maybe it's just an explosion, terrorist attack. Who knows, right? We've gotten past the flash. 3 minutes in is do you have medical gear? Is anyone injured? Was anyone hurt? We got a tourniquet. Tourniquet's great if you have a major injury on a limb. Do you have an Israeli bandage or a compressed bandage? You may need to perform first aid. People can bleed out very quickly. In the first 3 minutes is can you breathe and is anyone bleeding to death? Those are key things to think about in the first couple minutes of a disaster, right? So first 15 minutes to 3 hours, right? And this is move fast, right? You need shelter, whether it's a nuke, whether it's bad weather, whether you're in the desert, maybe you're in a plane that crashed in the desert, maybe you're just in the desert and your car died, you need shelter, right? So the first 15 minutes to 3 hours, get a shelter. If it's a nuke, as we said, indoor, basement, no windows, right? For a nuclear explosion, we say glass could shatter as far as 10 miles out. So if you're near a window or if you were counting on those windows for protection from the elements, from radioactive fallout, if you're within 10 miles, you might not have any more windows. What if it's just a winter storm? What if it's not a nuke and it's a winter storm? If it's cold, negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really cold, or you're wet and it's below 32 degrees, you can get hypothermia in as fast as 15 minutes and death death within an hour, and that really depends. It could be hypothermia in minutes, death in 15 minutes to an hour if it's really that cold. So after you know you can breathe and you're not bleeding out, shelter. Shelter's number one, whether it's a nuke, whether you fell in cold water, whether you're in the middle of the deserts, right? So in the desert, 30 minutes to an hour, you can get heat stroke. So if you're in the desert and you're walking around, you can get heat stroke. You can dehydrate pretty quickly, right? Dehydration a day and a half. Heat stroke can kick in 30 minutes to half an hour, right? So you've gotten in. You're 3 minutes into the disaster at this point. What do? You've got your shelter. You can breathe. You're not bleeding out. So first at that point is, do you bug out? Do you bug out or do you fortify? Do you have self-defense, right? So if you're in a city, nuclear bomb went off, they say the first 15 minutes, it'll take 15 minutes before fallout hits the ground. So if you are in that situation, you get to shelter. Maybe it's a bug out, right? You can only get so far in 15 minutes. And if you're in a major city, it's possible multiple nukes could go off. If you look at some of the nuclear war simulations of the big nuclear wars, you could be looking at multiple bombs over a period of an hour, hour and a half. We don't know what situation might occur, but if it's total nuclear war, you could be running from one nuke to another. Right, but you might have as much as 15 minutes after the first bomb goes off before fallout starts to land to get that shelter, right, get into shelter. But once you're in that your basic shelter, do you bug out or do you fortify, right? Bug out means, hey, we know this isn't where we intend to stay for any longer than we have to, so you start planning to bug out. Hopefully you have a bug out bag. There's a lot of bug out bags available pre-built, and we got some links on the Amazon store just to keep it simple. I might do a video on packing a bug out bag. There's a ton of videos out there on packing bug out bags, but if you're going to bug out, you should think about it ahead time. After nukes are going off is not the time to think about, hey, maybe we're going to bug out and we should start packing up, or even in the middle of a winter storm, if your shelter's compromised, it may not be time to start thinking about bugging out. So if you're going to bug out, if you're going to fortify, if you're going to bug in, think about it now, right? Start coming up with that plan, coming up with that idea. Once again, if it's nuclear blast and you're planning on bugging in, you might not have windows anymore if you're within 10 miles of an explosion. So think about how are you going to replace those windows? Is it plastic sheeting? Is it plywood? Do you need to fortify if you're bugging in? If there's people in the area, as we get past the first hours into days and weeks, expect looters. Look at what happened to Katrina. It didn't take long for looters, and that wasn't even an end of the world Shtf scenario. That was just a big storm, right? Really big storm, but a big storm. So are there going to be looters? Do you have self-defense, right? And this is certainly your number one option for self-defense. It may not be an option for you. It may not be an option you're comfortable with, but that is self-defense, right? That's the gold standard nowadays for self-defense. If you're going to go that route, take a class, learn how to use it, become proficient, be safe, right? But consider self-defense at that point in that 3-hour window, right? You need to have that plan. What are we doing? Where are we going? Within the first 3 days, so now we're between 3 hours and 3 days, we have our shelter. We're either bug out quick if you're going, you've decided to stay home. What do you need in the first 3 days of survival? Well, you need water, right? So I've got a couple things here. Shown them before. You've got a life straw, right? This is good for 1,000 gallons of water. Plan on a gallon of water a day per person. So theoretically, this gives you clean water for about 3 years, we'll say, roughly 3 years for one person, which is not a bad deal for a life straw. You can get them for probably about $10 right now. Another option for water is a Sawyer Mini. I think this is something like 100,000 gallons. So this is, you'll pass this on to your kids and they'll still be able to get clean water out of here. Different products, check them out. They're both in that $10 to $15 range, but you're gonna need water, right? Especially in that 3 days. Maybe you can make it as much as 10 days before you die of dehydration, but you don't want to die of dehydration. That's no fun. Something like this is good. This is a single wall stainless steel bottle. The advantage of single wall is you can capture water in it. and boil it, right? You can boil in a single wall, don't boil in a double wall, don't boil in an insulated water bottle. That's not going to go well. But the first 3 days you have your shelter, you need to be thinking about water. You need to be drinking water enough. Also sanitation, you're going to have to go to the bathroom in those 3 days. Now, if you're living in the city, don't know. You don't know if the toilets are going to work. Are they going to flush? Are you going to have a water supply to flush the toilets? Is the sewage going to back up? Where I'm at, I'm on aerobic septic, which means my entire sewage system is self-contained in my backyard. Without power, without water, that's not going to work great either. So thanks to Canadian Prepper, I've got my little toilet paper tablets, right? These are great. Roll of toilet paper will do too, but these seem cute and gimmicky. Each one's a little tablet that expands out. So you've got your toilet paper tablets. You're going to need sanitation in those first 3 days after the big boom, after the EMP and all the power's out. After any major Shtf situation, first 3 days is water, sanitation, shelter. Once again, security. Do you have security? Do you have self-defense? You figure 3 days, after 3 days, even if there's a nuclear explosion, right, hopefully you're clear of the radioactive zone, or you're deep in your shelter. If you're going deep in the shelter, once again, 80% of the radiation's gone after the first day. Realistically, you want to stay in there as deep and as long as you can, weeks, 2 weeks. If you're not in that direct zone, we'll call it 7-10 miles of a blast. If you're not in a fallout zone, and there's maps that are out there, you're going to be able to move around. Either way, within 3 days, if people don't have water, they're going to get really thirsty. So expect looters. You would suspect looters are likely going to hit the big targets first, which are your grocery stores, your big box stores, all that kind of stuff. They'll hit those first. Once that's cleared out, which could be in a day or 2 days, very quickly, they might start going door to door. So once again, that comes back into self-defense, right? Can you defend yourself in that first 3 days? Another thing you might want to look at, and I've shown this before, is a radio. Now, this is actually a shortwave radio, which is pretty cool. You can pick up a lot of signals. Just kind of got this at random a long time ago, but they make them. It's a world receiver. You're going to want to know what's going on in the world. It's got a hand crank, right? Now, if there's a major EMP, this may not work. I do not have these things in a Faraday cage, but you could. Faraday bag, they're out there. They might work. The last time a major nuclear test was a long time ago, and they've been developing the weapons ever since. Certainly our enemies have, so I don't know if we really know what's EMP proof or not EMP proof. You may not have communications. You may not have electricity at this point. If you do, you're going to want a radio to figure out what's going on in the world. It's not likely that your TV will be working, right? So radio is not a bad point. So as we said, first 3 days. 3 days you're mostly focused on water, sanitation, shelter, security, things like that. Well, as we said, looters, right? People that don't have water after 3 days in that 3 to 7 day range, certainly in the first 3 weeks, are going to be in a bad spot, right? People will die of dehydration. They'll die of starvation, certainly after 3 weeks. So the population is going to get really crazy, looking for things like food and water. If they don't have it stashed away, you can say the death count, right? People are going to start passing away, and they say EMP, after an EMP attack, as many as 90% of the population won't survive the first year. And you're going to start seeing those die-offs after, say, the first 7 days. Is the water group, the people that couldn't find water. After 3 weeks, going to, say, the first couple months, people without a reliable food supply are going to start dying of starvation, right? So let's talk about food. We've shown these before. Even something simple like a UST ration bar. This is 2,400 calories. This is almost 2 days of food by itself, or certainly one food in a high calorie burn situation. Maybe you're bugging out. Maybe you're building up your shelter. You're repairing your windows. Certainly a good option for food. These used to be about $5 each. I'm seeing them for about $10 now. Right, but we're thinking about food and want to thank Full Spectrum Survival. I never would have got one of these if not for them. It's a little spork here. It's a spoon, fork, knife combo. Certainly great to help you survive the apocalypse, but you're going to need food, right? Certainly within 3 weeks, certainly after the first three days, you need to start thinking about food, certainly water, medicine, right? So in that three weeks going into 3 months, you're talking about medicine, medical supplies. People that are heavily dependent on medicine to survive may not make it in that 3-month window, right? Maybe after the first 3 weeks, between 3 months, you're going to have a massive population decline. People dependent on medicine to survive probably will start passing away, right, in that time frame. You'll see more looters in that 3 months, that first 3-month range. People that have been able to survive by looting food, looting water, will continue to do so until they can't get a hold of it anymore, or they get stopped, right? We talked about self-defense. You're going to need that self-defense option. The first 3 months, you're going to want to keep a low profile, right? You don't want to be a target. I said people without food and water that haven't died yet are going to be looking for it, but this implies you're not one of those people. So as a prepper, do you have 3 months of food, right? We've done a lot of videos on dollar a day pantry food storage items, whether it's rice, beans, peanut butter, flour. A 90-day food supply for one person can cost you $90 or less. You're going to want to make the first 3 months. We talked about nuke. Once again, radiation is not going to be as bad in that 3-month window. Really, as we said, 80% of the radiation's gone after a day. The numbers are even lower after 2 weeks. You certainly don't want to die of radiation sickness, but things like unless you're near the blast, starvation, violence, dehydration will get you first, right? So moving into, we said the first year, 90% they predict would die after an EMP. Nuclear attack's not going to really be any different. Generally, nuclear attacks are going to have that EMP effect as well, potentially, and that has to do at the altitude of where they detonate the nuclear bombs. A ground strike is going to have less of an EMP than an airstrike, and from what I've read, what I've seen, the Soviet Union has more advanced EMP weapons that would have less of a nuclear strike. We don't really know, but all of these things are possible right now, and I couldn't tell you how likely any of this is to happen, other than it's more likely now than it's ever been, right? So that's how likely it is. We talked about EMP, we talked about nukes. There's also CME, coronal mass ejections. There was the Carrington event that happened in the 1800s where there was a coronal mass ejection that had an EMP effect. Now, at the time, there wasn't really a power grid to take down, but there were things like telegraph, and it affected electronics. There's a 100% guarantee our Earth will get hit by a CME that will wipe out all of electronics. We don't know when. We don't know if that's in our lifetime. We don't have enough data to predict major CME events out of more than, say, a couple days. And we're in a situation right now where they're predicting a large CME. It doesn't look like anything happened. There's not enough science on that for us to know. So we've talked about first 3 months. We're going into the first year. How do you survive that first year? How do you be one of that 10% that survives? Things like gardening, right? Maybe you have a year's food supply for your whole family, and maybe not. You're going to need gardening. You're going to need to grow food. You're going to need livestock. You're going to need a long-term water source, whatever that is, whether it's rainwater collection and filtration. Keep in mind, once again, if it's a nuclear event, you want to stay clear of radiation. Now, water itself will not become radiated, but it can carry radioactive particles. So if you filter it out, theoretically, water itself is water, and it cannot be radioactive, right? Just the particles in the water. Now, day one, if you're within 10 miles, your windows blew out. So tools, do you have the ability to make repairs? Do you have the knowledge to make repairs, to board your windows, especially if you're in an environment where you're having looters, having those skills to build basic construction, power? Well, if it's EMP, if it's a CME, if it's a nuke, we might not have power for a long time. Now, you could have backup power in a Faraday cage or something like that. That may or may not work. Shouldn't stop you from trying. But really, you said that first year, really, if you can make the first 3 months, you're going to make it longer than a lot of people. And if you can make it that first year, you're going to make it longer than 90% of the population. And the key to that is to be able to grow your own food, have your own livestock, right? Be in that situation. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be prepared, right? Is to have those supplies, have that mindset. Prepping is a mindset. Prepping is a lifestyle, right? And is it too late? It's not too late. There's food at the grocery stores. There's seeds at the grocery stores. You can start a garden tomorrow. If you're don't live in a place where you can start a garden or grow indoors, maybe you think about that lifestyle change. I said prepping's a lifestyle. It's a mindset to be prepared, to be ready to survive. And it's always a balance between skills and things. I mean, you can only skill yourself a glass of water so much. So you do need things to survive, but certainly having skills can reduce your dependency on supplies. Look at people like Naked and Afraid. Alone, they have minimal supplies and they're able to go out and survive. They have a lot of skills. It takes time to develop those skills, but prepping it is. It's that mindset. It's that I need to survive. I'm willing to survive. I'm developing the skills. I have the supplies needed to survive. Sorry, I can't speak anymore. So what do you do? What do you do now? Well, there's no nukes going off right now, fortunately, and hopefully they never do. Same thing with an EMP. Hopefully that never happens. We don't want any of that to happen. Maybe a CME will skip my lifetime and happen in a few thousand years. We don't know. We know the sun's going to give out CMEs. We don't know when. Less SHTF events. Winter storms happen, floods happen, wildfires happen. Those things happen. So you should be prepared for that. You should be prepared for those things now. So what do you do now? What do you do today? What do you do when the video is over? Certainly stick around to the end. You build a community, right? No one wants to survive alone. You see, once again, Naked and Afraid, 21 days. Gets really depressing living alone, certainly for any length of time. Build a community, build a group. MAG, mutual assistance group, is a popular term. Come together with like-minded people now and start preparing. Stockpile supplies. We've shown $1 a day preps. You can have 30 days worth of food for $30. And we're going to do another video here soon. I don't know what's going to drop first. We'll just walk you through packaging 25 pounds of beans in a 5-gallon bucket in a Mylar bag. That's about 4 weeks worth of food, roughly, right, in a Mylar bag for $25. So 25 days worth of food. Build infrastructure, right? What do you need? What do you need to prep? Build those skills. If you have some land, hey, we're building a turkey coop. Turkeys are a great prep, but they're a great pet, and they're going to be nice to have around the homestead. Really, it's about self-sufficiency, and certainly prepping. It doesn't hurt to be as self-sufficient as possible, and that's kind of the convergence between prepping and homesteading, is that level of self-sufficiency, right? Learn skills. Don't wait until apocalypse happens to figure out how to start a fire, how to defend yourself with self-defense tools. There's a ton of skills you can look at learning now. There's a lot of books that go over different areas: bushcraft skills, survival skills, self-defense skills, first aid. First aid is certainly important. And then communications. If you have a group, do you have walkie-talkies? Do you have ham radios? Do you have GMRS radios? People asking about communication all the time. FRS is your family band radio. Those don't require a license. You're not going to get a lot of range on an FRS radio. GMRS radios give you more range, but they require a license. You can get that online. Ham radio is going to be more range. That requires you to take a test. But think about communications now. Who would you want to talk to in a grid down? Who would you want to talk to in an emergency? Do you have friends you want to be able to reach out and say, hey guys, I need help, right? Or you want to be able to go to them if they need help and they want to reach out. Think about communications, right, as part of your what to do now, right? Once it happens, it's too late. It's too late to think about communications or going to the store and getting beans to put in a bag, right? You have to do that now. You have to start prepping now if you want to be ready in the event that something happens. And certainly if nothing happens, great. We all hope not, right? No one wants something like that to happen. Continue to live your life. You got foods preps, eat the food. Right, nothing's lost. You got water preps, drink the water. Nothing's lost, right? Don't spend money you don't have prepping. Certainly think about it now, though. You can't wait. Danger of not being prepared. And why make these videos? Why take this time? Because the more people that are prepared, the less people that are going to panic, that are going to rush to the grocery store, So you're going to have to fight for toilet paper. Hopefully you're not going to be one of the people lined up to fight for toilet paper. It does happen, and I think it's the majority of the population are completely unprepared. 3 days when the water's not coming out of the taps, they're going to be going door to door to see if their neighbors have any water, right? Hope not. Don't be part of the problem, right? Prepare now. We talked about what is SHTF, shit hit the fan. We talked about EMP, electromagnetic pulse, that's CME, coronal mass ejection, nuclear weapon, pandemics, right? We just got out of one. You look at what's happening with bird flu now, and it's pretty scary, right? I just saw a news article that says bird flu's decimating everything in its path. It's affecting mammals. It could, we don't know. I don't know odds. It seems like it's getting worse every year. But if bird flu ever got to the point that it's jumping from person to person, which we're not there, and hopefully we never get there, that's one of those Hollywood apocalypse pandemic situations. It's not going to be like COVID where you say, hey, 99% survival. No, maybe 50% or less, right? There's some pretty nasty stuff floating around Marburg that if those go pandemic, it's going to get pretty ugly. It's going to look a lot like a nuke went off, right? There's going to be huge panic, huge shutdown of everything, people hiding in their houses. If something like that happens, civil war, you hear about it more and more every day. I think we looked at the curious case of the doomsday hat, mathematical prepper, gun prepper, and I think we said something like 35% chance of civil war in your lifetime just using hydrology math based on the number of civil war and revolutionary war and how long the country's been around. So figure 30% chance in your lifetime of something like that happen again. Sure feels like the odds are higher right now with everything going on in America. That would be pretty ugly too, right? Civil war, pandemic, nukes, CME, EMP, the end of the world as we know it. Hopefully you got all the acronyms in there. There's a lot of scary stuff going on. Look at what happened with what's happening with China. If there is a war with China, if they do invade Taiwan, if we do try to stop them, imagine major supply chain shutdowns, if nothing else, if it doesn't escalate into a nuclear conflict or a conflict on our soil. Any war would shut down the supply chain. Look at how many things are made in China. All that would be gone. They're not gonna ship us goods and stuff if we're at war with them, right? So now's the time to think about being prepared. What do you need to do to prepare just in case? So once again, reaching out to build that community, to help people out, to minimize the number of people that are gonna panic in that kind of situation. So thank you for watching, sticking around to the end, and I appreciate you.